All right, I'm officially at this time ending the public input session for budget. And I am calling to order the May 11th, 2021 regularly scheduled board meeting for the Board of Trustees. If I can please have a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I move that we convene the executive session for the discussion of student appeals and student admission requests into the district's adult education program.
Second.
Motion's been made by Dr. Caution Parker, seconded by Ms. Mackey. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, if I can do a hand vote, please. And Dr. Holmes is on the phone. Okay, motion passes unanimously. We'll now convene into executive session. Any discussion? Zelina, are we computer voting or are you just a hand vote? Computer, all right. With that, no discussion, we'll have the vote.
Affirmative, Holmes.
All right, Dr. Holmes is on the phone and she votes in the positive, in the affirmative. And motion passes unanimously. All right, next on our agenda, we have the Inspirational Moment, Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight's Inspirational Moment will be delivered by Mr. Brandon Ross. And just a little backdrop as he is approaching the podium. Mr. Ross is a native.
Mr. Manning, can you cut it up? I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me now, Dr. Holmes? Dr. Jones?
Yes, I can.
You hear me? Okay. Mr. Ross is a native of Columbia, South Carolina, graduating from Eau Claire High School, and went on to pursue post-secondary education at the state's flagship university, University of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks. Professionally, Mr. Ross serves Richland District 2 as an assistant principal at Ridgeview High School, and he was recently named South Carolina's 2021 Secondary Assistant Principal of the Year by the South Carolina Association of School Administrators. He holds the designations of Emerging Leader by SCASDC, and Top 20 Under 40 by SC's South Carolina's Black Pages. He's currently overseeing one of the multi-million-dollar bond referendum construction projects for his school's long-anticipated stadium and other upgrades at Ridgeview High School. He enjoys working with students and making a positive difference in their lives, and believes that you make a living by what you get and you make a life by what you give. He desires to help elevate students to their next level academically and teachers to the next level in their professional practice. His long-term career goals include becoming a principal, and he currently resides in Blackwood, South Carolina with his family. And just to, toot the praises to his daughter, who was a track star extraordinaire, up and coming FloJo, and brilliant as well. And we're so glad to have you here, because aside from all of your accolades, you are a very kind person and gracious, and I always enjoy interacting with you and seeing how you interact with students. Thank you for taking the time to be here this evening, and we look forward to hearing from you. Without further ado, Mr. Ross.
Amen, amen, amen again. Thank you, Ms. Mackey. Good evening to our board members, Chairman Manning, Vice Chair Holmes, Superintendent Dr. Davis, everybody here under the sound of my voice, and to our Richland 2 viewing audience as well. Good evening. Whoever wrote that, Ms. Mackey, you should probably give them a raise. They did an excellent job.
Agreed.
They did an excellent
wholeheartedly.
job.
I talked to that principal about that.
Oh yeah, definitely. I hope you hear that, Dr. Mack. I know she's watching. I am Brandon Ross, as Ms. Mackey stated, assistant principal at Ridgeview High School. So very proud and honored to represent my school and represent my school community, represent the Richland 2 family as well. wearing the designation of South Carolina Assistant Principal of the Year. I'm still in disbelief sometimes when I hear that because of the amazing work that assistant principals are doing throughout our state. So honored to represent Ridgeview High School under the esteemed leadership of Dr. Brenda McFoxworth as well. Ridgeview is a wonderful place where we expect success in the 4 A's, academics, arts, activities, and athletics. And it's our hope that through those A's, students bind themselves to the learning process and pursue premier outcomes for their lives after they leave Ridgeview High School. And thinking about what I wanted to talk about today, 2 themes really came to mind, 2 words. The first of those words was plight. And I'm a mover, so this is going to teach me to be disciplined tonight because I'm normally used to having a mic and walking around, but I got to stand still a little bit. I appreciate that, Mr. King. The 2 words were plight and purpose. And when I think about the word plight, I think about those experiences that one has had in their life that truly they want to forget, but because of the trauma that it caused them, those experiences are then deemed unforgettable. And then I think about purpose as well. That's another tenet that I want to touch on tonight. When I think about purpose, I think about those things that people are uniquely gifted and created and called to do. So many of us, there's many things that we do well. But when I think about purpose, I think what you were created for, those things that you were specifically created and designed to do. And I want to talk about how those things intersect and how one caring educator really truly changed the trajectory of my entire life. Last week was filled with celebrations. We had the opportunity to celebrate Mother's Day on Sunday, so I bid you all a happy belated Mother's Day to whom that applies, for those of you who have birthed your own children, and for those of you who act as surrogate for people that you stand in the gap for. So happy belated Mother's Day to you all. Sending a special shout out to my mama, LaVon Ross, just so grateful for everything that she has done for me. Just watching her, she's really truly served as a model for me. Everything that my mom did, I wanted to do too. The reason I chose the University of South Carolina is because my mama went there, right? The reason I'm pursuing my doctorate degree, one of the reasons is because my mom did it. Because I saw her do it, I know that I can do it too. The only thing she did that I can't do, she had 4 kids. I'm stopping at 1. So extremely grateful for the work of my mom. And we also celebrated last week Teacher Appreciation Week. So I'd be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank the teachers for everything you do. Teachers in Richland too, teachers across the state of South Carolina, and teachers globally. Just so grateful for the work that you're doing, especially now. The last 14 months have been hectic, but you guys have been resilient, and I'm so grateful for all the work of our educators for continuing to try to move students and help them reach a successful outcome. So thank you, educators. And that really gets me to my next point, because I want to talk about the teacher that really changed my life. Ms. Doris Davidson, my 3rd grade teacher, Edward E. Taylor Elementary School. This woman is somebody that I will never forget. I remember growing up in Burnswood, which is a neighborhood, poverty-stricken neighborhood across from Eau Claire High School, across Monticello Road in Columbia. And Ms. Davidson was a teacher that I had that supported and believed in supporting black boys. It was 4 of us in her class, and I'll never forget their names because they were some of my closest friends: Vincent Scott, DeJuan McCann, Gerald Lancaster, and myself. And Ms. Davidson really believed in us. She supported us. She invested in us socially, emotionally, and academically. I remember in 3rd grade having a conversation with Ms. Davidson. Ms. Davidson said, "Brandon, I'm going to make sure by the end of this year, all of y'all are going to be in AAP," right? And if you don't know what AAP was, it was pretty much the honors program back in the day. I think it was Advanced Academic Placement, if I remember correctly. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. All I know is when I got to 4th grade to Ms. DeVoe's class, I was in AAP. I don't know if she had to pull some strings. I don't know what the test score requirements was, but she believed in me, and I was able to pursue that because of her belief in me. Ms. Davidson was caring, understanding, motivated, and non-judgmental. And that was important for us because I came from a neighborhood that was stricken by gang violence, poverty, drugs. I lived in a home that was infested with, and I'm not ashamed to say it, that was infested with roaches and infested with mice. But Ms. Davidson, she didn't care about the barriers that I had. She wanted to make sure that my needs were met. And she understood that having a mother of 4 boys, that I needed some extra support to make sure that I could continue to move throughout my learning in elementary school. So I'm so grateful for her, and I'm grateful for her belief in me. I think that's the most important thing, that she believed in me, and because she did, the manifestation is really standing in front of you right now. So because of everything that she believed way back in the 3rd grade, she gets to see the fruits of that on Facebook every day. And when I post on Facebook, she's the first one to always tell me congratulations and how proud she is of me. I talked about the barriers and her not letting that stop. Ms. Davidson would walk into my house and she would not care about the roaches that she would see crawling on the floor. She came to make sure that me and my brothers felt supported. Me and my 4 friends that I spoke to you about earlier, we all grew up in the same neighborhood, so she could hit all 4 houses at once. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the work of a caring educator who really changed my life. And I just want to encourage educators today, and I want to encourage everybody here under the sound of my voice, that I think educators often think about the number, but sometimes the 1 is enough. And I'm glad that Ms. Davidson reached the 1. Because she reached me, I'm able to have an impact on so many other people in the Richland 2 community and the Columbia area through the work that I'm doing with mentoring as well. And I'm just so grateful for that. So just want to be a reminder to educators and all of us that one is enough. Also want to remind everybody that our students have unlimited potential. They are able to do whatever it is that they desire. Sometimes it just takes that extra push from one caring educator, and they can be whatever they want to be, and that may even be Assistant Principal of the Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. If you'd all please join me and stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Thank you. Next, we have approval of our agenda. If I can please have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the agenda for the May 11th, 2021 regular board meeting of the Richland School District 2 Board of Trustees.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote.
Vote in the affirmative.
I think that's what I heard. Yeah. She sounds a little bit muffled. Is that on our end or her end?
Can you hear me better? I voted in the affirmative.
That's a little better, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
She said yes, affirmative, yes. Motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. We'll now move on to the presentation of a resolution. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, coming before us this evening for the presentation of a special resolution, we have our Senior Chief for Communications. We have our Senior Chief for Communications, Ms. Libby Ruth. Ms. Ruth?
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. It's been a while since I've been up here, but we have a very special individual we want to recognize tonight. So it's exciting and an honor to ask Miss Coretta Key. I knew I was going to do that. Ms. Coretta Key to come forward. She's a school social worker, and I also want to ask her principal, one of her principals, Bookman Road Elementary Principal Kendra Hill, to come forward, along with our district's lead social worker, Abby Cobb. Y'all stand right there. That's good. Ms. Key joined Richland 2 at the beginning of the 2019-2020 school year. She was and continues to be assigned to work at Blythewood Academy and Bookman Road Elementary Schools. She strives to meet the unique needs of each school and provide the most beneficial services for our students, families, and schools. It is a common experience that school social workers are asked to complete home visits. Home visits are a great way to connect with families, especially if they are experiencing challenges and barriers that might hamper their success at school. During the 2020-2021 school year, navigating services to ensure that the needs of our students and families were met, while also ensuring our staff remained safe and felt comfortable performing their job duties, was quite the challenge. Ms. Key went above and beyond what was expected, especially in light of the pandemic. She was frequently out in the community conducting home visits to help address student engagement. And really, that in and of itself is something to honor. But we have something even more just amazing to share. So in early December, yes, you want them in front of me? Yep. Okay, yep, y'all come stand in front of me. I am not the, right here be okay? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kenyon. You want to make sure it's front and center, Ms. Key.
Yeah.
So in early December, Ms. Key received an email from a teacher expressing concerns about her kindergarten student, as the student hadn't returned to e-learning since Thanksgiving break. Mrs. Key was out and about and decided to go ahead and swing by the home to check in. Her actions on that fateful day saved a life and have earned her the praise and admiration of so many, including the members of the South Carolina Senate. On February 10th, 2021, Senator McLeod introduced and the Senate unanimously passed a resolution honoring Mrs. Key. Senator McLeod was not able to be here with us tonight, so at this time, while Dr. Hill and Ms. Cobb present a framed copy of the resolution to Mrs. Key, I will read the resolution. I might need some more. This is Senate Resolution 543, introduced by Senator McLeod. Senate Resolution to recognize and honor Coretta Key, school social worker at Bookman Road Elementary, and to commend her heroic actions which saved the life of a student's grandmother. Whereas the South Carolina Senate is profoundly grateful for the outstanding work of Coretta Key during the heroic performance of her duties as a social worker, which saved the life of a grandmother of a kindergarten student at Bookman Road Elementary School. And whereas during the atypical time of remote and virtual learning across the state, the vital role of school learning support staff has become more essential than ever to ensure the needs of our students are met. And whereas Mrs. Key received an email Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, from a teacher and the attendance secretary regarding the absences of a student since the return from Thanksgiving break, and whereas she immediately responded that she would conduct a home visit to check on the status of the student and guardian, before she departed from the school, she notified the front office staff that she planned to conduct a home visit. And whereas Ms. Key arrived at the student's home, she noted 2 vehicles in the yard and rang the doorbell several times and then knocked on the door with her fist. The kindergarten student was able, with some effort, to open the door, and she seemed worried. And whereas after ascertaining that the child did not realize she should have been in school, she learned that the child's grandmother was with her, but that she was sick and unable to move. And whereas wearing personal protective equipment, Ms. Key asked the child to tell her family that she was entering the home. Calling out as she entered the home, Mrs. Key made her way upstairs where the student indicated the grandmother's room. And whereas Mrs. Key found the grandmother lying incoherent on the floor, she quickly located one other family member, an 8th grader, who was online logged into e-learning and who communicated that the grandmother, a diabetic, had been released from the hospital the previous day and a month earlier had been in ICU for 15 days as a result of a stroke. And whereas after securing both children in another room, Mrs. Key called 911 and provided her limited information of the situation. She cleared a pathway through the house for the EMS workers before calling school authorities to describe the crisis situation. And whereas upon swift arrival of EMS, she directed the paramedics to the grandmother and located the grandmother's identification and insurance card with the assistance of the older child. Whereas Ms. Key maintained composure for the sake of the 2 children as she watched EMS workers to save the life of the grandmother, who became oriented and was able to call Ms. Key by name as a lady from the school. An EMS worker told the grandmother that Ms. Key had helped to save her life, as she had only been minutes away from being in a diabetic coma. And whereas she assisted the older child to prepare food for the grandmother and to find clean clothes for the grandmother after her shower, she gave the older child instructions and her work cellular phone number to call for support. Before Ms. Key left, she spoke on the phone with a relative who was en route to the home. And whereas Ms. Key advised the grandmother to follow the physician's instructions regarding her medication and care and promised to return the next day, which she did. And whereas due to her diligence in the performance of her role, along with her constant mobilization to ensure the welfare of her students and their families, Coretta Key was in the right place at the right time to save a life. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of the South Carolina Senate by this resolution recognize and honor Coretta Key, school social worker at Bookman Road Elementary School, and commend her heroic actions which saved the life of a student's grandmother. Be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution be presented to Coretta Key, signed Mia McLeod in the Senate, Columbia, South Carolina, February 10th, 2021. I hereby certify that the foregoing is a true and correct copy of the resolution passed by the Senate, signed by Jeffrey Gossett, Clerk of the Senate. And because of your actions, the grandmother who we spoke with and was going to be asked us to be with us today is actually on a trip out of the country, enjoying life. So please join me in a round of applause that certainly won't do justice, but let Ms. Key know how much we are amazed and appreciative of all that she has done.
Thank you. Congratulations. It's amazing we have a lot of heroes in the district. So
Yes, we do.
thank you. Next, we have the approval of our consent agenda. If I can have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
before I make a motion, I would ask that we pull item 7.4, innovative course application, from the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. We'll pull it from the consent agenda, so the consent agenda will consist of items 7.1 through 7.3. If I can have a motion on the consent agenda with those items.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
I move to approve the consent agenda to include the minutes from previous meetings and employment in item 7.3, employment recommendations, releases, and in-district transfers.
Motion's been made by Ms. Agostini. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Scott. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, it's time to vote. Or, sorry, not all in favor, everybody, it's time to vote. So the motion was to approve 7.2, approval of minutes from the previous meeting, and 7.3, employment recommendations, releases, and in-district transfers. Essentially, she's approving the consent agenda. We pulled item 7.4 from the consent agenda. Yes, Dr.
Okay,
Kashipar.
my question for the record, we need to, I think we need to say why we're pulling it from the consent agenda.
Robert's rules lets a board member ask to remove it for separate consideration without further discussion as to why.
So, okay, so we just vote yes or no?
Well, no, we're voting right now on items. We're voting, we were moving 7.4. We're approving the rest of the consent agenda at this time, and then we'll address item 7.4 on its own.
After.
After, correct. Is everyone clear on that? And Dr. Scott, do you have or not Dr. Scott, Dr. Holmes, do you have, if you have on speakerphone or something, we're getting some feedback. Okay. So we have the motion that's on the screen to approve the items there. Is there any other discussion on that? We've already had the second. We'll take the vote now. And I did not get a pop-up, Zelina. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Dr. Holmes, what's your vote on the current motion before us?
I'm going to abstain because I really couldn't understand the motion, so I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Motion passes 5 yes, 2 abstain. All right, item 7.4, if I can have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
I'd like, my motion will be that I'd like to postpone this vote until the May 25th, 2021 board meeting.
All right, Ms. Agostini has made the motion to move this item to the May 25th meeting. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Scott. Is there further discussion?
Mr. Chair, what's the rationale for postponing the innovative course application?
Ms. Agostini.
And thank you, Mr. Chair and Ms. Mackey, for that question. First of all, we just received these agendas yesterday morning, and so I did not have, I've been able to briefly go over it. It sounds very interesting, but I have questions. My preference would be to have somebody come and speak to us and present to the board a 5-minute presentation. I have questions about us purchasing a forklift and a car, where the funds come from, what the liability is. So I would love to have somebody come and talk to us a little bit more about this program. Well, again, I think it's very innovative. I'd like more information regarding it before I'm able to vote. Thank you.
Further discussion? All right. Zelina, are you good? Okay. At this time, we'll have the vote. Dr. Holmes?
I vote no. No.
I'm sorry, say again, Zelina? Okay. Motion fails, 3 yes, or I'm sorry, motion does fail, 3 yes, 4 no. Okay. Next on our, so we need to readdress 7.4, if I can have a motion. Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve item 7.4, innovative course application.
All right, motion made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any further discussion? Ms. Scott? Dr. Scott, sorry. All right, if you can turn your mic on.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis and Mr. Alberts, if you won't mind coming to the podium so that we can address any questions that Dr. Scott and other board members may have regarding this innovative course application. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Scott.
Thank you guys so much for being here. I do have a lot of questions, and I want to agree with Mrs. Agostini that I wish we had just been given a presentation, therefore it would have eliminated the 10 questions that I do have. So maybe you can address this and it may answer some of Ms. Agostini's concerns and questions also. Question number 1, I noticed throughout the presentation it talked about the students will be given an opportunity to drive a forklift and a car. Can you explain a little bit about that? And I know the car is going to be a Volvo X240 electric car. Can you tell us a little bit more about that as far as insurance and the budget of how we're going to get that?
So thank you, Dr. Scott. It's good to see everybody in person, by the way, again. May I give a little bit of background that will lead up to the answer to that
Absolutely.
question? Okay, so the program, which was and still is right now under Dr. Katina Davis's supervision, had been housed temporarily at R2I2. Mm-hmm. And in those interim years, I've gotten to know the administrators of the program, and we tried to tie in those students as much as we possibly could with the R2I2 programming, and it's been a wonderful partnership. So we had a conversation amongst Dr. Davis's staff and the teachers involved, and we decided that we would try to move forward with the idea of it officially falling under the umbrella of R2I2, those two, the teacher's assistant and the teacher. And what that would allow us to do is further incorporate and provide some more inclusivity for the students with special needs that are not on a graduation track. We wrote the Innovative Course app to allow the State Department to grant us a CTE course number and therefore allow us access to CTE funds. So some of the things you see on there are dream list items that we would possibly pursue if we were to receive CTE status, which if you approve this, we feel like we've got a really good chance of getting. So the car, the electric car, would tie into a number of different CTE courses that already exist here at R2I2, but it would also be used for the purposes of the Power I program, which is the application in front of you today.
So the funds will come from the State Department of Education?
Right. There's a pot of funds that can only be used for CTE courses, and this Innovative Course app allows us access to that fund, to those funding.
What about the insurance, if something?
Yeah, excellent question, and we may never be able to even get that far, but I've been talking with Dr. Miley, and I know that he's started to look into it. Again, that's way far down the line. We included it in the Innovative Course app because it was something that we had mentioned to the State Department, who has been desirous of having special ed CAPE programming, so they're enthusiastic about this application. So it's that aspect of it with the electric car. That's kind of a dream notion. And of course, any liability and insurance questions would be handled by Dr. Miley in his office. And if it was allowable, I'm sure that we would be more than happy to come back and make a
And I guess I'm now totally confused, because if we approve this and the State Department does not give the funds, will we be responsible for providing the funds? Because this information is a part of the curriculum, which means, it's 19 weeks, which means what will we do if we did not receive the funds for this?
So I don't know if you have the attachments to the application, but on the attachments to the application, it indicates if certain parts of the proposal are not approved, that we would have other aspects of the curriculum that would be incorporated. So the overall thrust of the program is to get kids life skills and basic employability skills.
Right.
And part of that is allowing them, those who are deemed at the level to be ready by the specialists in special ed, to learn how to drive a car so they can transport themselves back and forth to work. So that was the thinking behind incorporating the vehicle into it. But again, it would tie into a number of different classes at R2I2, not just this class. And it's not something that we would pursue unless we were given CTE funding in excess of the amount of the car and the insurance. It wouldn't come out of any general fund or any previously assigned funds.
Okay. It also stated the students would make and sell honey candies. And my question is, what would they do with the proceeds?
The idea is that the proceeds would go back into that program. So we have a baking and pastry class, and that's a way for them to kind of partner with that class as well. It's a simple recipe where they just basically boil down honey and do a couple other culinary tricks and turn it into hard candy. That's also something we've had some experience with in the past. We've had bottled honey. I believe, Dr. Scott, you were on the board when we first opened up, and we had a honey business as one of our pilot programs, organic honey. So that is something we have a little bit of familiarity with. But the proceeds would go back into that class.
So who would they sell these items to? Would that be something that you can only purchase here at R2I2, or would that be online where parents and friends and family can make the purchase?
Yeah, so we're looking at the possible liability of selling consumables like we did when we first started the honey business. And as long as all that checks out, we would like to be able to sell it eventually outside of just the district office. But the initial plan would just be to do what we had done previously, which is just sell it to folks that work here in the Richland 2 family.
Okay, also, the students will work in the school store. Is that with an adult or just the students?
Oh, absolutely.
And will they be paid for that, or is that just part of their class and internship?
They'll actually be managing the school store, and they've already done some of that. And absolutely, they're with an adult the entire time, regardless of their activities.
What will be the accountability with receiving and giving out the correct change? Is that part of their learning experience?
The instructional assistant operates the register right next to the student who's designated to operate the register for that time period. So there's not really any discrepancies, any problems that we've had happen.
Okay. It also mentioned that this is a semester course, which is week 19 will be graduation. Now, if my math is correct, which is not always correct, it showed that will be about 6 months. How long is this class? Because I'm trying to figure out if it's a semester long, what would they do after graduation?
So graduation probably isn't the right term. These kids are not on a graduation track. I don't know, do you call it a certification track or a completion track?
Okay, the paper said graduation, so that should be changed to certification?
So graduation in the regard that they're graduating that class, yes, but not typical high school graduation. And your question about the length of the course is it's a semester-based course, and the reason for that is so that we can matriculate new groups of kids who we would like to afford the opportunity to be here at R2I2 and experience the Power I class.
So how long is a semester?
Semester's 19 weeks.
19 weeks. Okay. Also, it said that the students will be recommended by their care team. Can you tell me who is a part of the care team? And what if they're not recommended? Can a parent reach out to you guys and want their students to be a part of it?
So I'm going to give you a brief answer and then turn it over to Dr. Davis, who knows a lot more about special education than I certainly do. But these students are identified in middle school, and they're identified through cooperation with their parents and their guardians. And there's a small cadre of kids. So the cap on the class size is 12 students. So part of the reason for having the semester length course is that we would be able to accommodate pretty much a large percentage of the kids that were identified as being on a non-graduation track. As to how they're identified, I'm going to defer to Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Albersi. The IEP team, along with the staff usually from Voc Rehab, work with us to decide which students are selected for the program, because they have to be students that, though they may not be on a diploma track, they have to have some level of independence. Though an adult is with them, we want them to be able to function around the district office, interact with the community, because we have the community in the building, and in some cases they may be coming over and interacting with the staff that is in the district office portion of the building. So we have to have students that have the ability to do that. So we work with their specialists at their schools, along with the members of the IEP team and the community agencies that are a part of our what we call transition program. And all students who are in special education have a transition plan, because no matter their level of ability, we want to make sure the students have some goal that they're working towards for some level of employment, or it's what their lives will be like after they leave the secondary setting. And so that is the purpose of the program, is to do that. So we have to make sure that the students are, they have the ability to do that. And so the care team is essentially their IEP team, but we do add on some community partners to come in and help us establish the students' readiness for a program that requires a little bit more independence.
Okay. The application also mentioned that surveys were actually sent out to parents and students. Since we don't have a presentation, which I really wish we had one, can you tell us a little bit about what type of questions were indicated on the survey?
So in doing my research and speaking with the teachers, it's my understanding that employers, parents, and students are surveyed as they enter the program and as they matriculate through the special ed program, not necessarily the program here at R2I2, just the special ed program in general. The employers are surveyed to find out what matches can be made with kids that have different levels of ability as far as employment is concerned. The kids are surveyed about their level of enthusiasm about the coursework that they're in, and the parents are surveyed about a mixture of both, about the kids' enthusiasm in being involved in the program and also the practicality of it. And that happens periodically from once they're identified in middle school all the way through completion of the program.
And what type of employees? And I have just one more question, or two more after that. Who are some of the companies that?
I can get you a list of those companies. I don't have them in front of me, but Dr. Davis, do you have any ideas of the employers? I know Sodexo is one of the employers, for example, that they work with, so they survey the Sodexo folks. Service Solutions is another one. Obviously, these are two very close partners of Richland too. But Walmart has also been one, the Sam's Club folks, Publix, a lot of the grocery stores in the area. Anything retail where there's cashiers and I guess a classification of minimum wage jobs, businesses from those areas.
Okay. And also on the application, it stated that it was submitted on April 19th, but it also left out the question, which was, I think, 4.7. Let me go back to it. That indicated, have you received board approval for this course? And the answer to that was pending. So I'm just wondering, why would the application be submitted on April 19th with pending board support? Because most definitely I'm going to give my support. But I'm just wondering, why was it submitted prior to coming to us first?
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. I'm glad to be able to clarify that. So the overall deadline for the innovative course application for the State Department had passed by the time that we had crossed the T's and dotted all the I's on the transfer of the two employees underneath the R2I2 umbrella and sort of worked out what the program would look like amongst a lot of stakeholders. I called the State Department, we called the State Department and got special permission to submit the application even though the deadline had passed. Because we got that special permission and because they operate on a deadline too, I asked if it would be all right if we submitted the application in draft form, as you see in front of you, because we did not have the approval of the full board. Last year, incidentally, we have another innovative course that we already have operating at R2I2, our animation and beats course. Last year, the State Department's procedure was that the board chair only had to sign the document. This year it changed, so it had to have full board approval. So we wanted the State Department to work simultaneously to do what they needed to do to approve it while you all were doing the same thing so that we could theoretically in August when we come back have everything ready to go and have that CTE number and the availability of the CTE funds for these kids and for this course.
Thank you so much. I'm excited about the program. Just wanted clarification.
Sure.
So, and I know the students do well, and it's great to see you, Mr. Albersi.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Agostini.
And thank you all for that presentation, and Dr. Scott for those questions. That provides a lot more clarity, and I think it's also very exciting and also informational for our public to hear what we're doing and how we're trying to work with our special needs kids. In terms of the forklift in the car, those are just wish list items?
Well, the forklift, we actually already have a forklift, so it's just a matter of getting the instructional assistant and the teacher trained to be forklift certified. But we already have one of those, and we've been using it for other classes, so that's not an expense.
So we already have somebody instructing our kids on how to
Previously we did. We had our logistics course, which that teacher left a couple years ago to pursue other opportunities, and we changed that course into our beats and animation. So right now we don't have somebody that's certified to teach it, but that's another advantage of taking on this program is these teachers and the instructional assistant are interested in getting certified. That would not only allow the kids in the Power I class to become forklift certified, but we'd also be able to open it up to other kids, including kids that aren't necessarily enrolled here at R2I2.
Okay, and then my final question is about, do we already have a school store here at R2I2?
We have what's called the Innovation Station. So yeah, we've had that since almost we opened. It was student created, and we've sort of built on it. It allows us to provide snacks and different things for the kids because a lot of them are ripping and running between homeschool and here, and they need some kind of sustenance. So it's been a success for us so far.
All right, terrific. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Further questions from board members? From board members? All right. Without further ado, we'll take the vote. Thank you, Dr. Davis and Mr. Alberts.
Mr. Manning, I'm not there. Can you restate the motion?
The motion is to approve item 7.4 innovative course application.
Okay, I voted in the affirmative.
Motion passes 7 yes, 0 no. It passes unanimously. We now will move on to public participation, which we have no one signed up. Student appeals is next on our agenda, item 9.1. If I can please have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Scott.
I would like to make a motion for student number 1 that we deny the appeal. Also for student number 2, that we deny the appeal.
All right, motion's been made by Dr. Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Agostini. Is there further discussion? All right. So if there's no further discussion, we'll have the vote. Dr. Holmes?
Affirmative.
Motion passes unanimously. Item 9.2, student admission request into the district's adult education program. If I can have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Scott.
I'd like to make a motion that we grant the student admission request into the district adult education program for all 4 students.
Motion's been made by Dr. Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Seconded by Ms. Agostini. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote.
Affirmative.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. There's no need for item 9.3. There were no other items discussed in executive session. Item 10.1, approval of the 2021-22 board meeting schedule. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, you see before you a recommendation for a motion to suspend the requirement defined in policy BE board meetings to hold a regular board meeting on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of each month for the months of July 2021, November 2021, and December 2021, as well as April 2022, and adopt the 21-22 board meeting schedule as presented by district administration.
All right, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey?
I move to suspend the requirement defined in policy BE board meetings to hold a regular board meeting on the 2nd and 4th Tuesday of each month for the months of July 2021, November 2021, December 2021, and April 2022, and adopt the 2021-2022 board meeting schedule as presented by district administration.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Is that Ms. Agostini or Dr. Scott? Ms. Agostini?
I was going to say Dr. Scott can go first.
Okay, Dr. Scott.
Okay, just a few questions. As I was reviewing the calendar, I noticed a few things, and one is the time change. I noticed that for the July meeting, the time would be 6:00 p.m., and then the rest of the meetings will start at 6:30 p.m. Can you explain to me why did we decide to go to that time? Because I know whenever you're doing a time change with board meetings, that's supposed to come before the entire board to vote on. So if you could explain that for me, please.
Yes, ma'am. That's what we're doing. We're actually bringing this to you with these times already assigned for the board meetings for you to vote on to approve. The meeting change from July will remain at 6 o'clock because we will be in the summer. At 6:30, we'll in August the 10th and 24th, of course, is the start of the school year. So we're pushing the meetings back just a little bit to accommodate for the start of the school year.
Is there any
for the rest of
reason?
and for the remainder of the board calendar?
Is there any particular reason for the time change?
Dr. Scott, that in discussion with the district, I've had numerous board members ask me about returning back to normal board times. And with the return of the school year, return to quote unquote normalcy in order to provide opportunity for folks to be able to get to board meetings in a timely manner and take advantage of the public nature of our board meetings as has been done in the past. I asked the district to go ahead and put before the board the opportunity to go back to our previous scheduled times for board meetings rather than the alternative times as we've been doing under the COVID environment.
Okay, great. The other question is, I noticed in November, instead of having the second and fourth Tuesday, we're having the third Tuesday. Is that because of the Thanksgiving holiday, or is there a particular reason?
I need to check the, I'm sorry.
Just keep turning this off. I need to double check the calendar, but I do believe it is relations to the Thanksgiving holidays. I know, I'm sorry. It's the 4th. Right.
Okay, and my last question for April. I noticed we're having the board meeting on April 5th, which is the first Tuesday. Is there any particular reason? Because I went back to look at spring break, and I know that didn't interfere with that. So is there a reason why we are doing the first Tuesday in April instead of the second?
Give me 1 second, Dr. Scott.
Okay, no problem.
Spring break is April 2022 is April 11th through the 15th. So second Tuesday would be the 12th. So April 2022 spring break is the week of 11th, April 11th through 15th. So we would be on spring break.
So we're doing the first and the third Tuesday.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't have my calendar up. Thank you, Mrs. Ruth.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Agostini.
And Dr. Scott, covered most of the questions, but I'm concerned going back just to the time in terms of, July, we start at 6 o'clock and then we move to 6:30. And when you look at the state statute, which we've talked about before, it's supposed to be set on a regular date and at a regular time to be determined by each board during the organizational meeting. So, I'd like to see us be consistent. We've passed a motion over a year ago that we would leave it up to the superintendent and to the board chair, but the state statute says that we have to have it scheduled at a regular time. So I'd like to see us just stick with the 6:30 starting at the July meeting so that we can be consistent and so that the community does know when we are meeting.
Ms. Agostini, I feel that this does meet the statute. The times are consistent throughout the year and through published time. We're not alternating between meetings. We are on a regular schedule at one time set for the summer, and then when we go into the new school year, it reverts back to the normal time. And so in discussion with several folks, that does meet statute because it is consistent and it is published.
And what folks are you referring to, Mr. Chair?
I know we've talked, Dr. Davis, didn't we actually talk with legal counsel at one point on this a while back?
We did, Mr. Chair, but again, I think just speaking in generalities, I think we're publishing the information before our board. Our board policy allows for us to set our meetings and times as we see fit. We bring this information before the board for the board to discuss. Ms. Agostini has the opportunity as well as the obligation to share her displeasure or her disagreement with that, but we are in alignment with statute. We're not breaking any state law by setting the time at 6:30. We have the flexibility to change our schedules and times as we see fit. That must be approved by the board. We are asking the board for approval. So this is the recommendation from administration.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
I guess my question would be then what takes precedence, a school board district policy or a state statute?
And Ms. Agostini, I think we're saying that they're both in alignment. I believe that your interpretation of the statute is incorrect, and that the way that the superintendent, myself, have interpreted that statute, that our board policy and the presentation before you is in alignment with state statute. All right, are there any further questions?
I would like to ask a question.
Ms. McFadden?
Okay, so it says that will we start at 6:30? Is that to begin executive session, or is that for public session to start?
That would be public session, Ms. McFadden.
So we would
start at 6:30, beginning with the August board meetings. We will remain with a 6 o'clock start time for the board meeting, the first board meeting in July.
So for when we come in for executive session, we need to be here at 6 o'clock?
For the 6:30 board meetings, once schools start back, we'll have executive session, I believe, at 5:30, which will give us time to have a full executive session should we need it as a result of, particularly as we return back to school. We may see more items in executive session than we are seeing now as a result of COVID. And so we typically have scheduled an hour. That time is flexible. It can be moved back and forth, but administration along with the chair will alert the board of that time of executive session, but we will do our very best to keep that consistent so that board members can plan and prepare to be in attendance for executive session as always.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Dr. Caution Parker.
As the oldest person in here, like some folks like to call me, I don't think there's no one on this board that was on the board back during this time when we used to do this. And I've always worked closely with the board ever since 1998, where they would change the time, especially for executive session. In the summer, you wouldn't need as much because students were not in school, but you do need longer when we go back to school. Because we have we usually have more issues that come up during that time. So it's been in the past and years since 1998, where the times have changed like that for executive session. Sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes an hour. Anyway, just wanted to make sure everybody understood that. It's nothing new.
Okay, any other comments? All right, with that, we'll take the vote. Dr. Holmes.
Can you read the motion again?
To suspend the requirement defined in policy BE board meetings to hold a regular board meeting on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month for the months of July 2021, November 2021, December 2021, and April 2022, and adopt the 21-22 board meeting schedule as presented by district administration.
Voting in the affirmative.
And the motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. We'll now move on to item 10.2, class action lawsuit for Joule. If I can have a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
because of the addictive nature of vaping, the potential for serious health problems and other consequences for our students, the negative impacts on our schools, including having to address disciplinary and addiction issues, I move that we authorize the district to proceed with litigation against Joule and other responsible companies, and that, due to the unique nature of this lawsuit, we retain the following law firms on a contingency fee basis to represent the district in this litigation: Solomon Law Group, LLC, Halligan, Mahoney & Williams, PA, and Fraser, PLC.
Motion's been made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker.
Second.
seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any further discussion? Dr. Scott?
Thank you. I just want to say that when the Joule was originally presented to us, I did not support it because the district did not provide.
Dr. Scott, can you just move your mic a little bit closer to
Oh,
you?
absolutely. Is that better?
That's much better, thank you.
Okay. I stated that originally, when the Joule presentation was presented to us, I did not support it because it was not a lot of information shared and no research submitted at all. However, after going back and hearing the presentation, thanks to Ms. McFadden for requesting that, and doing some research on my own and speaking with several board members from other school districts who are also supporting this, I will render my support. But I must say this because I want the public to know that a few months ago, the majority of my board shared at a previous board meeting, and is on tape, that once the topic is presented to the board and it fails, that we should not go back and bring that presentation or that policy back before the board. However, as you can see, this is double standards at its best. When first presented, it was little information. It's more now, so you're going to gain my support. But I just want to say that regardless of whether we like a person or dislike a person, we should do what is best in the interest of our students, our employees, and our district. And because of that, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to render my support based on who I like or who I dislike. I'm going to render my support on the future of our district, our students, and our employees. But I just want the public to know that it was a double standard because this actually failed over a month ago, and it was brought back up. But when I tried to present something that was failed and asked if we can revisit it, several of my board members, one in particular said it's ridiculous to go back to look at something that has been failed and we represent it. And others chimed in to say once something fails, we should not hear it. So I just want to state that for the record. But most definitely after my research and talking with others, I will be supporting this policy. Thank you.
And Dr. Scott, I'd like to say I appreciate the fact that you'll support this. I do take extreme exception to many of your comments. I, in fact, did say that I made a comment at one board meeting. If you'll remember last board meeting, I stated that I incorrectly represented that an item cannot come forward. I restated the rules, Robert's Rules of Order, and how that should go. And in fact, there's never been an opportunity where somebody didn't present an item to be put on the agenda. It just got voted down by the board every time. So I do not, this is not personal. This is not about an individual. You continue to say that it's personal. It's not. This is a business meeting, and it's about the business of the board. And just because one board member does not get what they want repeatedly does not mean that it's tied to their person rather than somebody does not agree with the item.
Mr. Chair, for the record, if you go back and look at the tape, I think you'll have your answer. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Other discussion?
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Agostini?
Okay, again, I'm going to ask, what are our damages or what injuries have been suffered by our students or district?
Ms. Agostini, we discussed that at the last board meeting where we discussed the information that Ms. McFadden asked for was presented.
And at
Clearly.
that meeting, we were shown data that 70 students, and that would have been the peak in 2000, I believe, 18, 19. Out of our 28,000 students had been cited for having a Joule. But again, there are no damages told to us. We have not been told what their consequences are. In a class action lawsuit, the group or class of plaintiffs is represented by one or more lead plaintiffs. The injuries suffered and the allegations alleged by the lead plaintiff must be similar to those of other members of the class. But yet we have not been able to show what our damages or what our injuries are.
I disagree. The information was presented to us when Ms. McFadden asked for it at the last meeting. We saw the numbers. it was clearly indicated that the numbers may not be accurate during COVID because people were not in school. So there was a decline, but it's clearly related to the idea that we just didn't have students physically in school. We stated we do have a policy, and we stated that we see the potential for this to be on the rise in our community, which is one of the reasons why we are pursuing the lawsuit. So I disagree.
Well, so the lawsuit will be 5 to 10 years. I mean, estimated. That's generally how long a class action lawsuit takes. What is the district actively doing now to address this issue, other than sue somebody?
It was stated that the district does have a policy in place that addresses all sorts of substance abuse and misuse by students, and that we follow district policy when those things come up. And as the district sees a growth in an issue, they address the growth in the issue proportionately, which is how we address every substance abuse or
We actually have 3 policies regarding this issue.
Thank you.
And the final comments that I'll make are, first of all, my concern, I've heard people say it's not a financial issue. To me, it's been presented to me as a financial issue, as we have our CFO presenting the information versus this issue be addressed by our Chief Administrative Services Officer. I would think that we would have heard that there was a problem before we decided to join in this, or before we decide to join in this. And additionally, again, I'll repeat, I've not heard from any student, parent, teacher, or administrator or administration prior to this being presented to the board that this was an issue. The only person in the community that I heard from was a member of our General Assembly after the first vote who questioned why I voted the way that I voted. And her comment was that if we didn't participate, we wouldn't receive any recovery monies. And that was the focus of that conversation. I will say, I'm not saying that Jouling is not an issue, but it's not been presented as an issue in our district. Thank you.
And just one last comment is that our Chief Financial Officer also oversees our work with legal counsel, as he often presents to us legal issues across the district. So he represents, in this case, more than just his role as the Chief Financial Officer, but also is the lead individual in the district who manages our relationship with legal counsel. Dr. Scott.
Yes. Just one other question that I have. I noticed that we were going to retain 3 attorneys, Halligan, Mahoney, and Williams, Solomon Law Group, and Frazier. Is that at a cost to us because we have 3, or is that just part of the lawsuit?
That is not a cost to us. As was presented to us at the last meeting, there is no direct cost to the district. Mm-hmm. The way they would be compensated is upon the lawsuit being successful, the funds would be distributed in a pre-designated format through the lawsuit itself, not from district funds.
And all 3 law firms?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one more question.
Ms. Agostini.
Should the board decide to approve this tonight, what is the district's expectation in terms of information that needs to be provided to the attorneys, et cetera? What is the expectation there?
The expectation would be that if our legal counsel asks us for information, we'll provide the relevant information as requested.
But they haven't shared with us what that, time commitment is and the type of information that they'll be looking for?
Dr. Davis, did you have a comment?
They have not, but we will be able to address and support or provide any information regarding the lawsuit or what they may need. I have no idea what the expectation of time. I can't see what that would be, whether that's 5 hours or 5 hours or 15 hours. I have no idea what that would be. We will assess that and then meet the timelines that have been established, as we do with most issues that come before us as an administration. But we feel confident that we'll be able to handle that and continue to do our daily activities and work and ensure that our students are taken care of in our school district.
And I appreciate that answer, but I don't want us to, I'm not sure I'm choosing the right word, but be blind to the fact when people are saying that we do not have to pay the attorneys, that they're working on a contingency basis, that resources will be used that do cost the district and taxpayers money.
I agree, but as the chief administrator of the school district, that is the responsibility of the superintendent to ensure that staff provides and supports the school district in whatever manner we see fit as a board, and we can handle the workload as a district. We don't anticipate this being any additional stress on the resources of the school district or the time of our district administration beyond the point of what is considered to be normal with any issue that may come before us as a school district. So litigation issues come before us all the time, as well as unexpected things that come before us all the time. We monitor and adjust as professionals and provide the information that's needed when we are able to do so, but not sacrificing our focus on ensuring that our students are receiving a premier education in our school district.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Dr. Holmes.
I would like to just say that I am in favor of moving forward with this. I think that it is very important for us to be proactive in this situation, and that I am very happy that we will be attempting, if the vote goes our way, to move forward with this bill.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? With that, we'll have the vote.
Affirmative.
And motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. All right, next we have new business, no action requested. Dr. Davis, a report on the superintendent's highlights.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, and to our viewing community, it is at that time again that we will share the superintendent highlights, starting with our presidential awards for excellence in mathematics and science teaching. Kelly Mill MedPro Middle School science teacher Warren Wise is a finalist for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. The Presidential Awards are the highest honors bestowed by the United States government in K-12 STEM teaching. Wise was recognized at the April meeting of the State Board of Education. 6 South Carolina teachers are in the running for these prestigious awards. 1 science teacher and 1 math teacher from South Carolina will be selected and announced later this summer. The National Office of Professionals of the Year. Paying attention to the details is paying off for Lake Carolina Elementary Upper Campus Student Data Coordinator and Registrar, Mary Beth Gowries. She has been named the National Office Professional of the Year by the National Associations of Educational Office Professionals. Ms. Gowries will be recognized this summer in Pittsburgh at the organization's national conference. University of South Carolina Professional Development Schools. Shalanya Knotts Holliday, a kindergarten teacher at Killian Elementary School, has been awarded a Professional Development School's Doctor of Education Fellowship from the University of South Carolina. The fellowship seeks to forge collaboration between faculty at the university and PDS partner schools, Killian Elementary. Ms. Knotts Holliday is pursuing a doctoral degree in educational practice and innovation with an emphasis on curriculum studies and plans to use it to identify and address issues related to early childhood education. Richland Northeast High School English teacher Samantha Rainwater and Pinckney Adams, a school counselor at Catawba Trail Elementary School, are featured in the May edition of the Columbia Metropolitan Magazine. The article on classroom creativity focuses on how teachers engage students during the COVID pandemic and critical ways counselors keep students in a positive mental space. Richland Northeast High School band director Adrian Adams has been selected to participate in the Rose Parade, also known as the Tournament of Roses, in Pasadena, California in January 2022. The parade is held on New Year's Day prior to the Rose Bowl college football game. And Mr. Adams is in his first year as band director at Richland Northeast, and he is one of 3 band members in South Carolina chosen for this honor. When we think about the Richland 2 story, here's another one that rises to the top. First-year teacher and Richland 2 graduate, Faith Stewart, received a surprise visit yesterday in her classroom and was named the Rookie Teacher of the Block for April. Ms. Stewart teaches at Lake Carolina Elementary Upper Campus. Her supervisor, Lake Carolina Principal Jeff Williams, was also her assistant principal when she was a student in elementary school. Faith has another strong Richland 2 connection. Her mother, Tia Jones, who is an assistant principal at Catawba Trails Elementary. Rookie teacher of the block winners receive a plaque to hang outside their door, a nameplate for the door, a discounted tax preparation from H&R Block, a unique trophy designed by the 3D printing class at the Richland 2 Institute of Innovation, and a bag of Richland 2 goodies from Human Resources. Now I'm going to share some information with our community about graduations. It's hard to believe, but we are less than 1 month away from high school graduations for the class of 2021. These ceremonies are taking place at the Harry Perone Stadium, which is located on the campus of Spring Valley High School. The graduations are scheduled as follows. Tuesday, January the 8th, Spring Valley High School at 8 a.m. and Ridgeview High School at 7 p.m. Wednesday, January the 9th, Richland Northeast High School at 8 a.m. and Blythewood High School at 7 p.m. And Thursday, January the 10th, Westwood High School at 8 a.m. The district is taking steps to ensure that these celebrations of student achievement are memorable and, most importantly, safe. Students will receive tickets for 4 guests. Masks are required for admission. Guests are asked to bring their own mask to the ceremony. Inside the stadiums, guests and students will be required to maintain social distancing. Ceremonies will be streamed live online at richland2.org/livestream. Unfortunately, we had to make some changes to the original graduation schedule due to circumstances beyond our control. The good news is that we are moving forward with celebrating the accomplishments of our graduates, and we want to say thank you to everyone who's made that possible. To our parents, of course, to our students, teachers, and administrators for your support and understanding and patience. And last but not least, I'll just identify some celebrations in the month of May. Some have already passed, but this month we're celebrating Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, as well as Jewish American Heritage Month. On May 3rd through the 7th was Teacher Appreciation Week, Substitute Teacher Appreciation Week, and National Teacher Appreciation Day was May 5th. Of course, Mother's Day was May 9th, so happy belated Mother's Day to all of our mothers. And May 6th through the 12th was National Nurses Week. National School Nurses Day is on May 12th. School Nutrition Employee Week. School Lunch Hero Day was May 7th. And of course, Memorial Day would be May 25th. Mr. Chair, members of the board and community, that concludes the superintendent highlights for the May 11th, 2021 school board meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Davis.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Agostini?
I have one question.
Okay.
May I ask?
Yes.
And thank you, Dr. Davis, for that report. Just in terms of graduation, masks are required at the ceremonies by all. Is it a mask or a face shield? Do they have to wear a mask underneath their face shield is actually my question. Can they wear one or the other?
We're using the definitions that we use in our board policy that regarding face coverings.
So our policy says if there are accommodations. How do we know if people have accommodations?
We have to take their word for it, Ms. Agostini. I don't really know how we would know how they would have accommodations, but we expect our guests to follow our guidelines and rules, and we'll make the decisions and judgments based on that. I anticipate last year we had very few problems regarding that, and I don't anticipate any this year, but I'm sure some things will come up that we would need to address as an administration and as a district, so to make sure that everyone's safe in the arena.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have item 11.2, an update on the budget. Dr. Davis.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Coming before us this evening, we have our Senior Chief Financial Officer, Dr. Harry Miley, who will share a brief update with you regarding the general fund budget update for 2021-2022. Dr. Miley.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
We'll be doing this tonight. We did it a couple of weeks ago. It's an ever-moving target, but I wanted to update you where we are today. And I believe you have this document in your packet. One of the things I wanted to say first was we've been waiting. I think we put it in a board brief last week. We've been waiting for the Senate Finance what the Senate Finance Committee and the Senate passed, which was several weeks ago. We were waiting for that analysis and those numbers to come to us. What happens is the State Department of Education takes those budget numbers and then distributes and notifies all the districts of what the projected revenue flow to that district would be given the latest Senate Finance passing. We kept anticipating that, hopefully, because until we get those projections, we won't really know what our budget is. And you'll see in just a minute the difference in what happened in the House about a month and a half ago and then what the Senate did. It's quite ironic. This time last year, it was the House that had hundreds of millions of dollars and passed a budget, and then weeks later, the pandemic hit and we had zero money. And so this year's kind of flip-flopped. But about 6 weeks ago, the House passed a bill based on the Board of Economic Advisors projections. And the Board of Economic Advisors is the three-person body that forecasts tax revenues. And by law, the legislature takes that revenue estimate and uses that revenue estimate for building the budget. Based on the Board of Economic Advisors' latest revenue projections, the House allocated about $95 million, 94-something million dollars for K through 12 education. And one of the things primarily was raising the base student cost by $11 from $2,489 to $2,500. I did put a footnote there that basically the education finance law requires that base student cost to be a little over $3,100. So while we appreciate the $11 increase, the state law actually says it should be about $600 higher than that. And there was about $44 million in recurring EIA money. Then on April the 8th, the Board of Economic Advisors met and raised the revenue estimate by $315 million. So the Senate got their first hand, since the House had passed the bill with roughly $94 million for K through 12, the Senate got the new revenue estimates by the Board of Economic Advisors, and they had $315 million addition to a new money above what the House had appropriated. And so as you'll see from this slide, the Senate was much more aggressive in terms of funding K through 12. They, as you can see, they allocated $65 million to raise the base student cost, a whopping $16. So that's, but as every dollar helps the districts. They allocated $72 million for a $1,000 teacher pay raise. They'll just adjust the salary schedules at the state level by $1,000 each cell. $13 million for the state health plan, $32 million for PIBA contribution. If you remember the law that was passed about 5 years ago that increased the employer contribution for any employee who is a member of the PIBA retirement system at a percentage point each year. And that, for instance, that cost our district about $2.5 million a year. They allocated some funds. It's rarely quite enough to cover the full cost, but they did allocate $30 million statewide for that PIBA contribution, $27 million for charter schools, and then about $36 million for 4K expansion in the state. So about $245 million in the Senate version of the bill for K through 12. Again, that's what we wanted to hear from the State Department, what we were waiting on for the State Department to give us those projections of what that $245 million means for Richland too. We got those a little bit after 5 o'clock today, so we'll be including those in the next budget update we have, and including those in a budget proposal for you on the 25th. We did not have time tonight to incorporate those projections that we got at 5 o'clock. Some of the things, though, that are included in the Senate version and that we'll be doing here at the district, the first 4 of these are mandated at the state level. These are things that we will have in our budget. We will include in our budget. Hopefully they'll be funded by the state, but either way, we'll include them. The first one is the increase in the employer share of health insurance. Second one is the state retirement employer contribution. Teacher salary schedules. If you remember back about 5 months ago, the legislature passed a joint resolution appropriating $50 million for a retroactive step increase. You as a board approved us doing that about 6 weeks ago. The problem with that step increase that the legislature passed at that time was it wasn't through the budget process. It was a one-time money, $50 million, not through the budget process, but excess funds they had, and it was not on a recurring basis. And so one of the things that we were encouraged by the Senate version of the bill is that not only did they add recurring dollars for the new step for teachers in FY 21-22, they inserted enough funding for the old step that they gave us 6 weeks ago. They included funding for that to be recurring. So that was a real positive thing. That's about $2 million for someone like Richland 2. If they had not provided that, we would have had to come up with that from our own sources. So those 4 things are mandated by state law. We, as a district, have historically, whatever's been done for the teachers, we try to do for non-teachers. And so those budget items will also be included. We hope be able to do that. We have the $1,000 teacher salary increase mandated by state law. We are considering also the same $1,000 increase for non-teachers. And then one of the items that we're evaluating and will include in the budget if we have the funding, and I know it's a priority for you, for the board, is to try to increase our starting salary for new teachers. And the proposal what we're working on is to try to raise that up to $41,000 for a new starting teacher, well above the state average and well above our current starting salary. So that's kind of what we're working on. That total is about $14 million. Hopefully we will be funded by the state for a good chunk of that. That's a highly technical finance term, but a good chunk of that would be funded by the state. We will hopefully have funds from local sources to pay the rest. But one of the things that I wanted to point out was that's $14 million new money that we'll need to carry on and implement those increases. What you don't see up there are any new programs, any new FTEs, or anything like that. So this will be a challenging budget, although that's a lot of money. It's all going to employees at this point, and mostly the teachers and our other employees. What I will give you is this is kind of what we're looking at right now in terms of our timeline. And I've only been here 8 years or so, but it really seemed to be a lot easier 3 or 4 years ago in the budget time. It seemed to be much more normal, much more scheduling was more normal. It seems like it gets more abnormal every year. So I apologize for the nature of our timing, but it's just we're so dependent on the state legislature, and they have been a little bit different over the last few years. And I'll give you a good example of that in just a minute. This week, on May 13th, the County Council has a budget work session. There's no vote. It's just a Zoom session that they'll have for public input and discussions and questions about the individual agencies' budgets. I plan to attend that Zoom meeting. On the interesting twist to this, our budget process this year, or an additional interesting twist, is that if you remember, I told you that this House passed the bill first. It wasn't a whole lot of money. The Board of Economic Advisors met, raised the revenue estimate by $315 million, and the Senate got the bill and allocated more funding. Now the Senate bill has gone back to the House, and the House is planning on revisiting that, but they're waiting until the Board of Economic Advisors meets on May the 20th, and I'm sure they're anticipating hopefully to return the favor. And if there are new monies, then the House gets, if the Board of Economic Advisors raises their estimate, then the House will have first crack at those funding in terms of allocating how they should be spent. So it may be a little bit of returning the favor there. We plan to have a budget for you to consider May the 25th. Based on at least the Senate Finance version of the bill on May 25th. We may have to amend it depending on what the legislature does. But on May 25th, we'll bring that back to you for first reading. As you remember, our budget is also approved by County Council in 3 readings. The County Council has already given first reading to our budget, but it's on title only. That's what that's their practice. They always do that. They're planning on a second reading on May the 27th. We will not have our second reading on our budget, but giving your first reading on May the 25th, we hope that we can at least settle on a local dollar amount that we can then take to the county on the 26th. They can give second reading on May the 27th, and then they plan on giving third reading on May the 23rd, although those 2 readings will only affect our local portion of our budget, which is roughly about 1/3 of our total budget. Then the House and Senate have announced that they are not going to come back. They're not going to address the budget until they come back in June. So it will be mid to late June before the House and Senate reconcile the state budget. And so we may be facing the same tight timeline this year as we did last year. And so our final numbers from the state may not be decided until late June. You have a board meeting on June the 29th. We're hoping to have a second reading of our budget on the June 29th. That is, if the state has finalized the budget. If they haven't, we will also have prepared for you to consider adopting a continuing resolution as we did last year. If the state hasn't adopted a budget by June 29th, we will be asking you to pass and adopt a continuing resolution for us to continue to operate until the state does pass the state budget. What's next? We will just continue to operate. We're going to continue to work on the budget. We'll analyze the Senate finance projections by the SDE that we got tonight. We'll work on our internal requests from our departments, and then we'll update you as we get more information. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions. I appreciate your time.
Board members, questions?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini.
Thank you so much, Dr. Miley, for the presentation. In terms of if perchance we have to adopt a continuing resolution again, if there's no state budget, would that be the $301 million?
Yes, ma'am.
That's what we'd expect, so the above 14.3 million wish list would not take place?
Correct, until the state budget is passed.
Thank you.
Other board members? All right, so the 25th will be presented with at the 25th meeting, we'll have our first full budget presentation as to what the budget will look like.
Correct, and at this time, based on the Senate, the legislature saying we're not going to adopt a budget until June, that'll be based on the Senate finance projections that we have at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, with no further questions, we'll move on to item 11.3, update on the school start times.
Thank you.
Dr. Davis. Thank you, Dr. Miley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, to our viewing community, we have coming before us our Assistant Superintendent for Administration as well as our Chief for Operations and Logistics to give us an update on our school start time, our proposal for school start times.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Good evening, Mr. Manning and members of the board.
Good evening.
And Mr. Anderson and I came before you, I believe it was our second meeting in March. We gave you an update on where we were with this project that started a couple years ago. And so we're here tonight to do another update. You'll see on the screen and in your notes in your report the timeline that we've used. We started this process in the spring semester of 2018 with a research review. In the 2018-19 school year is when we did the parent and employee survey. Used that information last school year to start planning some next steps, and then we went into COVID season. And so this year, we've spent our time doing a transportation analysis, and when we were last with you, shared that the next phase of the project was to conduct a series of partner input opportunities. And so we're here this evening to share with you the feedback that we received from our partners in those feedback opportunities. one of the feedback opportunities that was provided to partners were focus groups. We conducted focus groups with 2 groups of students, a set of middle school students as well as high school students, just to get their thoughts and feedback. We also have had conversations with bus drivers at each of our bus driver hubs, as well as representatives from after-school care providers in our community. Our next partner input opportunity consisted of our advisory councils, which is our standard procedure for major decisions such as this. So it included Dr. Davis's Faculty Advisory Council, our Parent Advisory Council, as well as our Classified Staff Advisory Council. And for each of those council meetings, Mr. Anderson and I presented the information just as we did to you at the March 23rd board meeting, and allowed an opportunity for attendees to provide input or to provide feedback. They also had an opportunity to provide written feedback in the form of a jam board. One other group that we presented to that isn't on the screen because it's not necessarily an advisory council, but we did have a discussion about school start time with our school principals. And then our next input opportunity was a series of community conversations. You'll see the dates and times of those conversations listed on the screen. The community conversations were designed to get input, again, from a variety of partners. And there was one community conversation that we conducted in Espanol. For the format of the community conversations, they were virtual. So they were conducted via Zoom. They started with the presentation. Again, Mr. Anderson and I presenting the information exactly the way that you got it at the board meeting on the 23rd. Following the presentation, we divided the groups into small groups, and each small group was assigned a district representative to be a small group facilitator, in which our attendees had an opportunity to ask additional questions that they didn't want to pose to the whole group, or to give specific feedback and input. And then we concluded each community conversation with an opportunity for those in attendance to complete an exit slip. The first item on the exit slip asked the attendees to look at the 7 scenarios that were presented and to choose their 2 favorite scenarios. And you'll see the results of those in a couple of slides. And then the second item on the exit slip was just an open-ended item where attendees had the opportunity to just share any open feedback they would like to share. And to give an idea of the audience for our community conversations, what you see in gold there on that middle column indicates the total number of people who registered for one of the community conversations, and then what the breakout of that is in terms of the type of group. So were they parents, employees, both parents and employees, a student, or other? The other category was largely grandparents. We did, in that group, also had 2 community members, one of whom is a former Richland 2 parent. But for the most part, the other category would be grandparents. In the blue column, it shows the total number of partners who actually attended one of the 5 community conversations, and again, what the breakdown is by group. And I'll shift over so Mr. Anderson can share with you some of the summary feedback.
Thank you, Dr. Franklin, and good evening, everyone. Good to see you all again. So Dr. Franklin really gave a good explanation of what we've been doing, all the people we've talked to, all the people we've gotten feedback from. And so now I want to shift gears a little bit and tell you some of that feedback we received and some of the summary of that. So on this slide, this is Dr. Franklin and our team who's been involved in this have worked really hard to really try to summarize and get all this anecdotal data back to see some of the trends. And so this feedback here is coming from all of the surveys, all of the parent advisory councils, the different groups we met with. And so these are the 3 ones that really stuck out. They were really neck and neck. One was not very much ahead of the other, but they were a clear delineation between all the other feedback we got. So you can see these are the feedbacks, and some of these feedback is what we heard at our board meeting in March with you all as well. Dr. Franklin mentioned earlier in the community conversations that we had on the survey the opportunity for them to let us know, just pick a scenario that you would think would be ideal. You can see, and so this came just from that survey. It did not come from the Parent Advisory Council or others. It just came from that survey. And you can see right there 24% on what they thought was these two scenarios here with the start times of elementary, middle, and high. You can see how those, and the third one being at the bottom, and then you can see compared to what our current start times is and what that change would be.
Will,
yes, ma'am.
Would you go back to the slide previously and just read those 3 quotes just for our listeners? Because they may not be able to see.
Sure,
the
yes,
summary.
ma'am. So
Thank you.
we had 3, great question. Thank you for saying that. We had 3 major summaries that came from all the feedback. Number 1 being concern about elementary students at the bus stop in the dark. A second trend was the concern about the timing of changing start times, meaning it's May and we're looking at changing the start times potentially for next year. And then number 3, that the agreement with the later start times being beneficial for older children, that there was an agreement among that we needed middle and high schoolers to start later in the day. And I'll read this slide to Dr. Scott so I can keep doing that. So you can see here, elementary students, the 25% who took the survey on the community conversations, 7:45 elementary start time, 8:15 middle, and 8:45 high. 24%, 7:45 elementary, middle 8:30, high 9 o'clock, and 19%, 7:45 elementary, 9 o'clock middle, and 8:30 high. Our current start times before COVID, because we have flexibility right now, 8 o'clock elementary, 7:30 middle, and 8:35 high. We also just wanted to show you all a sample scenario. This is not a recommendation. This is just so you can see the end times as well, what the school day would look like. So the school day, in essence, the timing of the day doesn't change. It's still the same 7.5, 8-hour day of time for instructional time, but just how those times shift. So you can see that currently elementary is 8 to 2:50. The sample schedule of the one that was the 25% that picked would be 7:45 to 2:35. Middle school currently 7:30 to 2:25. This sample would be 8:15 to 3:10. High school 8:35 to 3:38. Current the sample schedule will be 8:45 to 3:48. So you can see those changes there. So what's next? So we did make the decision, and based on the feedback, that we are not going to make a change for next school year. Due to the timing of May, we do not feel like it's in our best interest to recommend to you all to change that due to the families, teachers, a lot of things. So we are not here today and will not come back next week or next board meeting to ask for a change in start times. We did hear some suggested start times from some of our parents and others in these conversations, and so we want to continue that analysis. Some very good ideas, good feedback, so we can see how those work. So we're still going to be working some more transportation analysis. And then when we're ready to make that recommendation, we do think we need to make a change, and we're going to make a recommendation late summer, early fall, and we'll come back with a formal recommendation to you all and have that discussion and answer any questions based on that formal recommendation. And with that, Dr. Franklin and I are happy to answer any questions that we didn't share in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, questions or comments? Dr. Scott?
Thank you so much for this information. Just one question. Have you guys considered the walkers that we have in some of the schools? Do we have more walkers in some areas than others? And did you take that into consideration?
We will take that into consideration. We do have some of our neighborhood schools or have a much more higher, Lake Carolinas, for example, have a lot of higher, but we'll definitely, it's a good feedback for us as we continue investigating and coming back with a recommendation in the fall. Yes,
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Agostini?
Thank you so much for that presentation. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciated, your top 3 concerns. One of the, and this is just in my mind and what I heard from what happened and why it was changed years before. Did you hear a lot of concern about the older kids being at home?
We did not. We were a little disappointed because we were expecting that to emerge as a theme. And so like on the screen, on go back to that slide, that had the top 3 concerns.
Yeah.
We did hear about the need for older or middle school students to be at home, but it appeared on the list as like number 6, along with 3 other concerns. So it was tied with 3 other other themes, but it ranked on the list at like number 6.
Okay, and my other question is, and somebody can get this to me later, I'm just curious about the average cost of, after-school care. If we know that. I'm just, if we change it and the kids can't go home, and I think one of the reasons why it might not be much a concern anymore, somebody said this at the last meeting, was because, we've got such great after-school care now. I was just curious about the cost for those families that it might impact if, we change the start time for the elementary school kids and parents can't get there to pick them up.
Or from what I'm familiar with at the elementary and middle school level, that it ranges from like $50 to $65 per week, and that there is a sliding fee if you have more than one child enrolled in the program.
All right, thank you.
And may I just add, we've had a lot more grants since this started too. So we have 21st Century grants at 9 different schools that they go to free aftercare. And so we do have a lot of Boys and Girls Club they've worked with you on your income. So we can get that answer for you more specific, but there's definitely some variation in cost.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Other questions or comments from the board? It's amazing how much effort when I look at some of these things like elementary school. I mean, it's a shift in 15 minutes, right, from beginning to the end, but it's a lot of effort. Definitely necessary to start some of these transitions, but there's a lot that goes into these 10 and 15-minute transitions for some of these things. Thank you very much for that report. Legislative priorities. Ms. Roof, I believe you're going to do that for us today since Dr. Holmes is on the phone and it's a little bit awkward.
Good evening, and thank you for this time to get the update. I provided the board with a hard copy today. As we give these, I write these updates or work with the committee to prepare the updates, usually on Wednesdays. And as y'all know, the legislature goes through Thursday, and a lot can happen Thursday. It's really just 2 days, but Thursday and today before the meeting. So I do have to give updates sometimes. One of the biggest updates that came out from that I had included last week was just the fact that the General Assembly will conclude its regular session this Thursday. And really, through this, what they call the sine die resolution, divides the remaining work for 2020 into 3 parts. May 13th is pretty much the last day for general legislative work. After this date, they can act on conference committee reports. So if a bill has passed both chambers of the body and there was a difference and they had formed a conference committee and that conference committee comes back with a recommendation, that bill could be acted on, either passed as amended from the conference committee and then sent to the governor. But otherwise, no bills that aren't passed by or put into a conference committee by this Thursday basically will carry over until the next session starts. Part 2 of this session starts in January of 2021. As Dr. Miley mentioned, they're really the focus of the work for the rest of really not getting until June now that they're going to wait on the BEA's predictions. Forecast is the budget, and that is going to be what they focus on doing. Might be interested in knowing the electoral redistricting process is actually required because of the census. They did not get to that, so there is a chance, I believe the sine die resolution allows for them to come back in the fall and possibly address that issue. Since the report was updated, the biggest, other than the budget update, which Dr. Miley talked with you about, is Senate Bill 201, and this is the bill that deals with declaring an educational state of emergency and what the state superintendent of education powers have when that is declared. This has become a little bit, reminds me of like watching a tennis match, because on May 6th, the Senate amended the version that the House passed on April 29th, and now they've returned it to the House again, and it basically has a difference between how long you have to be in an underperforming, identified as underperforming. The Senate version wants 3 consecutive years of underperforming before you can be declared into a state of educational emergency. The House version, which was passed on April 29th and sent to the Senate, was 5 out of the last 7 years. And so now it goes back to the House, and they will decide if they agree or if this then would be one that goes into conference committee. And that really is the most activity. Others bills that we've been paying attention to and following, most of my updates were, though, there has been no activity since May 10th. So I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. Board members, questions or comments?
Mrs. Roof, when you say 3 consecutive years or 5 consecutive years for the House and 3 for the Senate, are they going, if it does pass, are they going to backtrack and say 3 years from this date or 3 years starting from this date?
I believe it would be 3 years from the date of this specified as when the bill goes into effect. So it would not like go back and include this previous year or 2 years. It would be from the point of that bill going into effect.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Agostini.
I just want to thank Mrs. Roof for doing this. This is a lot of work, and I know you work really hard, and things continually change, so I appreciate you keeping us up to date. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed working, learning a lot about the process and working with the committee. It's actually very interesting when you start getting in and watching the state government and how they make decisions. It's been an interesting learning process.
Not scary, interesting. Dr. Scott.
I appreciate you.
I do have a question. Can you tell me when the committee meets, and do we put out a public announcement so therefore if anyone wants to come and be a part of the committee meeting, they can?
I can, or Ms. Mackey and Ms. McFadden, but the committee has not met since we had our first meeting. I just provide these reports for each board meeting.
So there is no official...
by Dr. Holmes, who presents them at the board meeting.
So there's no official, like, meeting day or time, like the second Monday at 5 o'clock? Okay.
Correct.
I do want to state, though,
I'm sorry. So the committee has not met. The initial goal of the committee was to come up with our priorities, which the board adopted, and now the updates that are provided are in line with the priorities that the board set. And continued changes. Dr. Davis?
Yes, I just want to state, because I think it was a great question Dr. Scott asked for the record, we did announce when the committee met. So I think she asked that question too. So when the committee met, it was announced and a notice was done, it was open to the public, and we had the meeting. But since that meeting, we have not had an additional meeting. Administration is working along with the members of that assigned committee to get the information to Dr. Holmes to provide the update to the board, which is in alignment with what we've done in the past when we've done some legislative updates. We've provided that information to a member of the board who was designated as the person that would deliver that information at said board meeting, and that's what we're continuing to do.
Correct. Yes, thank you. Other questions or comments? Thank you very much, Ms. Rue. All right, next we have our agenda items for the May 25th, 2021 meeting. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the board, and to our viewing public, you can see that we have for the May 25th, 2021 regular scheduled board meeting. We'll call this board meeting to order at 5:30, where we will go into executive session. Listed on this draft agenda for executive session, we have student appeals and student admissions to the district's adult education program. Come out of executive session, we'll call for the vote to come out of it. We'll come out of executive session and call for a vote to end executive session and start our public session at 6 o'clock with our inspirational moment. Approval of the agenda. We'll ask for the approval of the consent agenda. We'll have public participation at 6.1. We'll have the voting on executive session items. Under new business, no action requested, we'll have our superintendent highlights. We'll provide a report on the valuing employees survey, as well as the third quarter financial report. We'll have an additional budget report from Dr. Miley, followed by an update on mental health, capital improvements, and our legislative priorities. We'll ask then and provide for you a copy of the, we'll provide and go over the draft agenda for the June 29th, 2021 board meeting. Ask for the approval of said of agenda, public participation number 2, followed by board and superintendent comments, executive session 2 if needed, and voting on executive session 2 items if needed, and then ask for an adjournment.
Board members, questions or comments? We'll now move on to the approval of the draft agenda for May 25th, 2021. If I can please have a motion. Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the draft agenda items for the May 25th, 2021 regular meeting of the Richland 2 School Board of Trustees.
Motion made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Dr. Caution Parker. Is there any discussion? With no discussion, we'll have the vote. Dr. Holmes.
Affirmative.
And the motion passes 6 yes, 1 no. Second, public participation. No one signed up, so we will move on to board and superintendent comments. Dr. Scott.
I'd like to say thank you to Brandon Ross, who's the assistant principal at Ridgeview High School, for a wonderful inspirational moment. He too is a product of Richland School District 1, which I'm from, and we have in common that it was our third grade teachers that motivated us to become educators. So thank you, Mr. Ross, for that presentation. Also would like to say congratulations to Mrs. Faith Stewart. Faith was a 3rd or 4th grader at Rice Creek when I was one of the assistant principals there. So I'm so proud of Faith for becoming Rookie Teacher of the Year. And also to those who presented tonight, want to say thank you very much for your presentations. They were very detailed. And Mr. Abersi, although we did not get a presentation tonight, I'm very excited about what you guys are getting ready to do with our special needs students. So just want to say thank you. And as always, continue to stay safe, wear your mask, and wash your hands. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Dr. Caution Parker.
Excuse me. I too would like to thank Mr. Ross for the inspirational moment. It was just great. I'd also like to say congratulations to Ms. Key on her special recognition this evening by us and by the Senate. And thank you again, Dr. Davis, for your positive highlights. I think they really make a difference, and that's what we need to hear. Some of the good things that are happening here instead of all the other issues. And thanks to everyone who gave their report, their information, all the informative information provided this in our reports. And looking forward to graduation.
Thank you. Ms. Agostini.
I too want to thank Mr. Ross for his inspirational moment and just sharing that, you know, one is enough. One person caring does make a huge difference in a child's life. In the spirit of Teacher Appreciation Week last week, also thank you to all the teachers. Congratulations to all those who were recognized this evening. And gosh, thought I had one more thing, but also, again, just want to, the CAPE presentation, the special needs. Thank you so much for that impromptu presentation and allowing us to ask questions so we had a better understanding. I think that really is, I mean, it's very exciting, actually, and something wonderful to offer to our students. And finally, again, Mrs. Ruth, thank you so much for your hard work on those legislative updates. I know it's a lot of work, and I really do appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McFadden.
I just want to say to Dr. Miley and that budget, I appreciate you breaking it down on that one sheet so I can see what it is. And so I appreciate that. And for Ms. Ruth as well, I know going back and forth with the Senate and the House is like a tennis ball match, but thank y'all so much. And I try to jump on when I can because I think it's pretty interesting as well. But you guys kind of make it, clarify it for me for what y'all do here at the school board. So I want to say thank you for that. And then the young lady who received that award, that is really awesome. I used to do home visits myself, and sometimes those situations aren't the greatest, but she was able to help some folks out, and I think that's really commendable. So I just thank the Senate for recognizing her for that. And Mr. Ross, I had the opportunity to meet him at the graduation. I think it was for the AVA graduation. So it's good to hear the stories that Miss Amelia tells us about. So I just want to say thank you to everyone and all your hard work as usual. You guys really make it easy to sit up here. I was telling them the other day, I was like, well, I really don't feel like I'm doing anything. I really feel like, I'm just listening and trying to figure out this thing or whatever. And I just want to say thank y'all for all your hard work that make this look a little bit easier than what it is for you guys. So I appreciate it so very much.
Dr. Holmes.
I'd just like to say thank you, Brandon Ross, for your presentation. Actually, my mother was the principal secretary at E.E. Taylor for many years. So congratulations, Brandon. Great presentation. And also to Ms. Coretta on her award from the Senate. I think that's wonderful. And to all the presentations that were done tonight. I hate that I'm not in person with you all, but just know that I hope that you have a wonderful and prosperous week. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Everyone else has left the call.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Davis, thank you for sharing your superintendent highlights. It makes it easier to say ditto and for you to acknowledge the acknowledgement. If you follow the district's Twitter or emails on U2 newsletter, there are so many people with accolades that are outstanding all the time. So thank you for taking the time to share those in your superintendent highlights. For the folks who are here and gotta be, thank you. And for making our meetings flow easier, thank you. For those who are watching and listening, thank you. We appreciate what you do. Mr. Ross, I'm thankful for his talk and his walk that are aligned in his kindness and being gracious. And in the measure of plight versus purpose, I thank him that he was enough tonight. He was enough, and I'm sure that the Theta Nu chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated is very proud of him this evening from of South Carolina. But bless you all, and Mrs. Ruth and Dr. Davis, I'm sure who oversaid this. For Senator McLeod to have done the proclamation for Ms. King, I appreciate that. But thank you for thinking it not robbery to share that with us at a board meeting as well. That is quite impactful, and it just means a lot for our unsung heroes. So. You all have a good evening. Bless you lots and lots and lots. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start off by also thanking my staff for a tremendous job in tonight's board's presentations, to all the presenters. Thank you so much for all your effort and energy that you put into making sure that these presentations are premier and top-notch. I want to say congratulations to our board for supporting our special education program and our students. This is an innovative approach to providing our students with a unique opportunity to develop a skill set that will make them employable and marketable. I think one of the things that was lost in the presentation is the opportunity to help them develop an entrepreneurial spirit and possibly one day own their own business, so they can not only contribute to their community, but also help employ others. So I'm super excited about the opportunity that the board has allowed us to do to provide this for our students. I also want to say congratulations to the board for supporting the health initiative and the health of our community. It's important, as I stated earlier when we talked about the Joule opportunity, that we sometimes have to step up to the table and take the lead because we have an opportunity and an obligation, I think, to be leaders not only in this community but in the state because of the positions and the fortunes that we have. So I appreciate the board and congratulate the board on doing that. I want to say that I'm super excited about the opportunity for us to strongly, of the proposal that we made to raise teacher pay and employee pay in our district. As we're looking at our budget season for next year. I know it's something that administration is looking for, but it's also something I want to give kudos to the board for the community to know that this has been a priority of the board to make sure that we take care of our employees and our employees here in the school district. And so administration has come with a bold proposal to go to $41,000 for starting teacher pay. And it's bold, but we want to show that we are serious about investing in our people. And so we're excited about the opportunity to try to make this work. And I know Dr. Mile is cringing over there because it hasn't been passed and he's trying to worry about where we're going to get the money from, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to try to make it, we're going to make it work, Dr. Mile. Yeah. You gotta believe, brother. I want to say again to Ms. Key, we had an opportunity to thank her earlier, but she did a phenomenal job and stepped up to the table and saved someone's life in our community. I just, that cannot be overstated or understated, I should say. That is tremendous, and I don't know what someone else would have done in that situation, but it also speaks to our culture, that our professionals are in and visiting our families and are not afraid to step into our families' world and make sure that they're taking care of everyone. And so I'm so thankful for her. I want to also again just publicly thank the board for their support from last week's incident with our bus and the hijacking and the soldier trainee from Fort Jackson. But I just want to thank the board for the support that they gave administration, allow us to do the really, really important stuff, which is to ensure that our students were being taken care of. But every board member was super supportive, asking what they could do to assist, being patient with information as we were trying to deliver it simultaneously as we were addressing that issue, and that can't be understated as well. And so I thank the board for that, and again to our teachers for Teacher Appreciation Week. I shared with some students yesterday, Mr. Chair, and the members of the board, that the person that you are will be the teacher, is the teacher who you will become. And if you are a compassionate person, you'll be a compassionate teacher. And if you are an inquisitive person, you'll be an inquisitive teacher. And if you're an optimistic and caring person, you'll be an optimistic and caring teacher. And I think that plays out in any role that we take on, whether it's superintendent, whether it is a teacher, whether it's a bus driver. Who you are comes through each and every time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And certainly want to echo, I mean, we often say that our bus drivers in many, many cases are the first face and the last face that students see every day in school. And I think the actions we saw from a bus driver show that they have a huge role in the safety of our students, not just in the way that they drive and conduct themselves and make sure that all the students are conducting themselves appropriately on the bus, but also sometimes the interaction with folks that shouldn't even be there. And unfortunately, we've had cases of other adults who have gotten on buses at times, and bus drivers have to deal with that. In this case, it was highly elevated with the firearm involved. And so we want to thank our bus drivers for the work that they do and the way that they care about our students and keep them safe. And I just keep going back to the comment that the driver said, it's just my job. I mean, I think that's how they all feel about it. And it just speaks volumes to the character of all the staff that we have. I know, Dr. Scott, you often make reference to we should visit students' homes, and here's a case where we have staff that do, in fact, visit homes, and in this case had an even bigger impact, not just on the grandmother who survived, but also the folks that rely on her to be there for them, those young folks in the home and the others that rely on her. So we're doing great things with that. And to the staff with your presentations, as somebody who in my other life at times has to present to a board, I appreciate the work that y'all do coming up. You never know what questions board members are going to put in front of you, and sometimes you get put on the spot to come up with answers when we don't always do a great job of letting you know ahead of time when we have questions. So thank you for that. I know it can be tough sometimes to do that. Again, having been put in that position, and the other side, you recognize that a little bit, and I appreciate it. So thank you. And Dr. Davis, I agree. Is the 5th largest district in the state, sometimes we have to be bold and step out. And I think this Joule lawsuit is one way that we can do that, one way that we are doing that. Sometimes we're going to have to step out in front and lead, and not always just follow or do what others are doing, but actually step out there. So I appreciate the support of the board in this. I think it will affect the safety and health of our community, and will most likely lead to other benefits down the road. And we live in a now society where we want to see everything happen now. And unfortunately, there are things that don't happen now. And this is one of those where the lawsuit will take years, but I think the benefit is worth the time invested. With that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
Motion made by Ms. Mackey. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Agostini. Is there any discussion? All in favor, if you'll raise your right hand. Raise them high, please. And the motion's unanimous. We are now adjourned.